In the blistering heat of the Libyan desert, November 1941, Erwin Rommel, the cunning desert fox, stared at the horizon with a growing sense of dread. He'd built his reputation on outsmarting the British, turning the vast sands into a deadly chessboard where his panzer divisions reigned supreme. But as dust plumes rose like ominous storm clouds near Gabr Salah on the 19th, Rommel's world tilted. What emerged wasn't the slow, armored juggernauts he'd anticipated from bitter lessons in France. No, these were ghosts on tracks. British Crusader tanks hurtling forward at an unbelievable 27 miles per hour, rewriting the rules of warfare before his eyes and leaving his meticulously planned defenses in the dust. Rommel had learned the hard way about British armor back in May 1940 at Arras. His 7th Panzer Division had been caught off guard by Matilda tanks, their thick skins laughing off 37mm shells like harmless pebbles. He'd watched in horror as his anti-tank guns fired futilely, tracers ricocheting into the air while the enemy rumbled onward, unstoppable. Only by scrambling to repurpose 88mm flak guns, high-velocity beasts meant for aircraft, did he turn the tide, their shells finally piercing the Matilda's hides. That day etched a doctrine into his mind: layer defenses deep, channel the sluggish British heavies into kill zones, and let superior German firepower do the rest. In North Africa, Rommel had perfected this strategy. His Afrika Korps deployed anti-tank screens in overlapping fields, minefields to funnel attackers, and those fearsome 88s held in reserve like a hidden ace. Intelligence reports painted a reassuring picture. The British relied on ponderous infantry tanks like the Matilda, topping out at 12 miles per hour, or the Valentine, barely faster at 15 miles per hour. These were machines for grinding assaults, advancing at infantry pace to support foot soldiers, not for daring maneuvers. Even earlier British cruisers had been dismissible, fast but fragile, prone to breakdowns in the harsh desert, their thin armor no match for German 50mm guns. The desert itself seemed an ally to Rommel's plans. Endless open terrain offered no cover for sneaky flanks. Enemies had to cross vast expanses under watchful eyes, giving his gunners time to zero in. His panzers, agile 3s and IVs, were positioned for exploitation after the Brits were worn down, not for chaotic chases. Logistics prioritized ammo for static defenses, assuming the enemy would obligingly walk into the trap. But the Crusaders shattered it all. These weren't lumbering brutes. They were cavalry reborn in steel, powered by repurposed American Liberty V-12 engines from World War I-era aircraft. Born from Britain's frantic rearmament as France crumbled in 1940, the Crusader, officially tank, cruiser Mk6, was a rush job by Nuffield Mechanization, the Morris car makers. Starting from the flawed Covenanter design, engineers swapped in the reliable 340 horsepower Liberty to fix overheating woes, slashing armor to just 40mm up front, half the Matilda's, to prioritize speed. Weighing 19 tons, it screamed across sand at 27 miles per hour, double the infantry tank's crawl and outpacing earlier cruisers. Production had ramped up wildly in late 1940, with factories in Birmingham and Coventry churning them out despite teething issues, clogged air filters in dust storms, imperfect cooling, and quirky auxiliary turrets that added little value. Yet here they were, in numbers Rommel's spies had missed, sweeping his flanks like a sandstorm. German panzer crews, used to tracking slow targets, struggled to swivel turrets fast enough. The Crusaders didn't charge head-on. They appeared on secure horizons, probed weaknesses, then accelerated away, forcing frantic redeployments of reserves meant for breakthroughs elsewhere. The battlefield's rhythm, Rommel's masterful ballet of position and firepower, faltered. Speed wasn't just a spec, it was a revolution, letting British commanders evade traps, circle around, and strike where least expected. On the 20th at Sidi Rezeg, the nightmare peaked. A full brigade of Crusaders materialized in Rommel's supposed rear, traversing in mere hours what his planners had deemed a day's march for British armor. No breakthrough, no gap exploited, they'd simply bypassed everything. The shockwave hit hard, doctrines needed rewriting, timetables scrapped, assumptions buried in the sand. Rommel had geared up for a slugfest with armored titans. Instead, he faced a fluid cavalry war, where elusive foes picked the fights. In those frantic first 48 hours of Operation Crusader, as chaos unfolded under the relentless sun, the Desert Fox grasped a chilling reality. The deadliest foe isn't the one with impenetrable armor. It's the one that dictates the battlefield. His countermoves in the weeks ahead would shape the campaign's fate. As Rommel grappled with this unsettling new reality in the opening days of Operation Crusader, the British pressed their advantage, unwittingly testing a doctrine forged in the interwar years and now thrown into the unforgiving crucible of desert war. British tank philosophy had long divided armor into two sharp categories. Slow, heavily plated infantry tanks like the Matilda for smashing fortified lines, and swift cruisers designed to exploit gaps like modern cavalry. Visionaries such as JFC Fuller and Basil Liddell Hart had championed this split, arguing that tanks must either endure hellish defensive fire or race deep to sow chaos in enemy rear areas. The Crusader embodied the cruiser ideal perfectly. Thin 40mm armor traded for blistering speed, powered by the reliable old Liberty V12, and armed with a punchy 2-pounder gun that could knock out German tanks at decent ranges but frustratingly lacked high-explosive shells for softer targets. Later models ditched the quirky auxiliary turrets that cluttered early versions, but the first Crusaders shipped to Egypt kept them. By autumn 1941, hundreds had arrived, re-equipping entire brigades of the 8th Army. Crews loved the roomy interiors and raw pace compared to older cruisers, yet fretted over the paper-thin protection and the gun's limitations. No one knew if speed could truly compensate for steel, until the desert decided. Unlike German medium panzers or the emerging Soviet T-34, which sought balance in armor, firepower, and mobility, Britain stuck rigidly to specialization. It assumed commanders could always pick the right tool for the job, infantry tanks for the brutal breakthrough, cruisers only afterward. But North Africa's endless open sands blurred those phases. There were no fixed trenches to breach, only fluid battles where cruisers often led the charge straight into prepared anti-tank traps. On the cold dawn of November 18, 1941, Operation Crusader erupted. The 8th Army surged west with its largest armored force yet, over 700 tanks, including some 200 brand-new Crusaders in 5 regiments, alongside American Stuarts, lingering Matildas, and Valentines. General Alan Cunningham's plan was bold: bypass Rommel's coastal strongpoints, sweep deep inland across the border wire, seize key crossroads like Gabr Saleh, then drive northwest to relieve besieged Tobruk while hunting down the Afrika Korps. Tobruk's garrison had held out since April, tying down Axis forces at huge cost to British sea supplies. Relief was urgent, and Churchill demanded a win to lift spirits amid global setbacks from Singapore to Moscow. Speed was everything. Outpace Rommel's knack for concentrating scattered panzers and turn British numbers into decisive local superiority. The 7th Armored Division, the Desert Rats, led with their fresh Crusaders gleaming under the sun. Dust plumes betrayed the advance for miles as columns snaked forward, radios crackling, crews scanning featureless horizons. German scouts spotted them midday on the 19th near Gabr Saleh, but reports carried an edge of disbelief. These British tanks weren't crawling, they were charging at speeds no briefing had predicted. Panzer Commander Wilhelm Bock, peering through binoculars with his Mark IIIs dug in, expected a textbook engagement. His 50mm guns opened at long range, scoring sparks on hulls, only for the Crusaders to accelerate, fan out, and surge past without pausing to duel. By the 20th at Sidi Rezeg, alarm turned to crisis. The 4th Armored Brigade, packed with Crusaders, emerged on the airfield's flanks hours ahead of schedule, covering ground at nearly double the pace German planners had allowed. Oberst Hans Kramer watched in frustration as his hulled-down panzers covered perfect kill zones that the British simply bypassed, looping wide instead of charging in. Rommel's defenses, built for a predictable foe, were unraveling. The Crusaders weren't just fast, they were forcing the Desert Fox to dance to a tempo he couldn't control. And the battle had only just begun. As the chaos intensified in those blistering November days, Rommel's Afrika Korps found itself chasing shadows, British Crusaders that danced just beyond grasp, turning the Desert Fox's own playbook against him. Panzer doctrine had always thrived on superior mobility, concentrating force swiftly at critical points while dodging bad fights. But when Crusaders matched or surpassed German cross-country speeds, that edge vanished. Radio chatter exploded with frantic updates, enemy tanks popping up at impossible grid references, vanishing into wadis only to resurface miles away, bypassing anti-tank lines instead of slamming into them. German gunners still claimed kills when ranges closed, But the initiative, the power to choose the fight, was slipping into British hands. Rommel's layered defenses demanded an obliging enemy who advanced predictably into the traps. The Crusaders flatly refused. British commanders, sensing newfound freedom, exploited it ruthlessly. Brigadier Jock Campbell of the 7th Armored Brigade spread his fast cruisers across wide fronts, threatening multiple axes at once. Where slower tanks locked brigades to one slow-grinding path, Crusaders allowed feints and rapid redirects, drawing German responses one way, then striking elsewhere before reserves could shift. The standout example came on November 21 near Point 175, a low ridge bristling with German anti-tank guns. Old-school tactics would have demanded a costly frontal slugfest. Instead, the 2nd Royal Gloucestershire Hussars split forces. One troop kicked up dust with long-range harassing fire to pin the defenders, while the main body raced south at full throttle, covering 6 miles in just 20 minutes before wheeling north to smash the exposed flank. By the time German crews frantically traversed their guns, Crusaders were already overrunning positions, turning lethal weapons into sitting ducks. Rommel's command style, racing forward in his command vehicle to orchestrate counterstrokes, faltered as crises erupted faster than he could reach them. On the 22nd, the pattern repeated. German units braced for assaults that never materialized, only for Crusaders to threaten entirely new sectors. Even the Italian RE8 division southeast of Bir el Gubi watched helplessly as British cruisers simply looped around their dug-in defenses. Reserves rushed to plug gaps arrived to empty sand. The threat had relocated. This wasn't mere tactics, it was operational paralysis. Rommel's economy of force mastery relied on shifting units quicker than the British could exploit openings. Now, with matching speeds, he couldn't mass decisively. The decisive point kept moving. The 4th Armored Brigade pulled off a masterstroke on the 23rd, feinting east toward Sidi Omar to lure panzer reserves, then executing a daring 30-mile northern hook that seized the Trig Capuzzo supply road half a day ahead of schedule. It didn't annihilate German forces, but it compelled Rommel to retreat units from hard-won ground to safeguard his logistics. Yet speed's double edge cut deep. Scattered across Sidi Rizega's wreckage, burned-out Crusaders testified to thin armor's brutal cost. 40mm shrugged off splinters and small arms fire, but crumpled against Panzer III's 50mm or emerging long 75s. Hits penetrated cleanly, often brewing up ammo racks in catastrophic blasts. Crews had mere seconds to escape, and many didn't. The 2-pounders' limitations worsened the imbalance. Solid shot pierced German armor reliably only inside 1,000 yards, while German guns killed Crusaders from 1,500. Lacking high-explosive rounds, Crusader crews couldn't suppress soft targets or guns from safe distance, forcing risky closes or helpless bypasses. On the 23rd south of Sidi Rezeg, the 5th Royal Tank Regiment blundered into an unseen anti-tank screen. Speed outran reconnaissance, and lost 11 tanks in minutes, survivors fleeing only by flooring it to break contact. Still, paradox emerged in the loss ratios. Crusaders suffered proportionally fewer destructions than earlier cruisers or even better armored Valentines.
Why?
Velocity let them disengage before disaster, scatter under fire, or evade entirely, turning retreat into survival. Standing fights meant death. Constant motion bought life. These hard-won truths reshaped British tank thinking. Crew reports emphasized mobility over extra plate. Better to dodge 10 shells than stop one. Lessons birthed the Cromwell, faster yet, 40 miles per hour via Meteor engine, with thicker frontal armor and a dual-purpose 75mm gun, then the late war Comet, blending high speed, 32 miles per hour, potent 77mm firepower, and decent protection. The Crusaders' influence rippled wider. It validated speed in an age obsessed with ever heavier armor, Tigers, Panthers, IS-2s. Americans echoed it in the Sherman, reliable mobility over invulnerability, enabling wide maneuvers. Even Germans adapted. The Panther gained genuine cross-country pace to match what Crusaders had inflicted. Operation Crusader ended inconclusively. Rommel withdrew intact, battles raging on for months, but its doctrinal shift endured. British armored forces learned to dictate tempo, appearing unpredictably to unbalance the enemy. The Crusader fought on through Gazala and El Alamein until replaced by Shermans and its own successors. In the end, its true legacy was simple yet profound. In Desert War, the ultimate armor wasn't steel thickness. It was being somewhere else when the shells arrived.